Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Real Politique. Tonight, we speak Tobago matters for the first half an hour. We get to know someone who has taken up a leadership position and a leadership role in Trinidad and Tobago, but more so in the Tobago political space. It is my real privilege to have invited the minority leader of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Kelvom Morris, to join me on the show tonight. And we are going to get to know him better. We're going to get to know the man behind the title of Minority Leader of the THA. And we are going to delve into his contribution to the Tobago political space as it speaks to short-term and long-term. I welcome Mr. Kelvom Morris. How are you? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Mohammed. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and all viewers that are online.
It's really an honor to have you on, and I'm really happy that you accepted my invitation for tonight. Now, you are new to the political landscape, and you are also pretty young, you are one of the few, I would say, the new generation of leaders in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell me, let's get to know you on a personal basis. How old are you?
Well, I am 38 years young. I am someone who came from very humble beginnings. A large family of 7 siblings. Parents separated, and I was one of the first to really, the only child out of the 7 to go on to undergraduate and then graduate level studies. So my family has always been a source of support to me. I'm also married with 2 kids, a daughter and a son, and a beautiful wife, I must say. I've been blessed. And, I've utilized family life, and community life has always been the underpinning of my interactions. So I've been someone very rooted in my community, a very small community in Tobago called WIM. It's on the outskirts of Scarborough. And, it's one of those communities persons may stigmatize at times and believe it's one of those deprived, at-risk communities. But in that community, would find a rich vein of especially sporting talents. And over time, we have utilized our sporting acumen to advance ourselves. So in my situation, I was able to benefit from a student athletic scholarship playing football. And from there, I got involved in politics when I returned, working with former Assemblyman Claudia Groom Duke. I'm sure you might be familiar with that name.
Yes, very much.
And many of the things I have come to appreciate in politics is because of her love for people, her dedication to people, and the philosophy that people really comes first. Anyone would tell you she's still very respected in our district because of that kind of relationship she maintained with people, putting them first.
She has actually been one of those few who has been able to sit in the parliament and also sit in the House of Assembly. So she's been in the Senate as a senator, a government senator, and then went on to become Secretary of Health. And she did indeed hold that position very much with a lot of vigor and a lot of, she did not allow the political lines to prevent her from communicating with central government. So yes, I agree with you. She is a role model in politics for you to follow. Now you said you're qualified in undergrad and postgrad. What's your specialization?
So I attended the University of North Georgia in the Georgia, United States, and there I would have earned a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology, major sociology, minor psychology, and I went on to qualify myself in international relations with the University of Leicestershire.
Oh,
So that has been the whole social underpinnings of society and how, you know, we relate with the global society. That has always been an interest to me, and that continues to be the things that motivate me. So I've always been about people understanding societies, understanding people, and the interactions between society, governments, and that kind of thing.
I must commend you. It's a fantastic combination, and indeed, you have actually married sociology with regard to the whole diaspora and the linkage to people, and then you went on to marry it again further with international relations, and that's absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to you on that. Now, tell me something. How long have you been in active politics? You sat in the 6-6 regime. Were you in the regime prior to that?
I was not involved in the frontline politics until that period of 2021.
Okay.
But interestingly, as I told you, I worked with Assemblyman Claude Ramdial, and I was called upon in that 2013, you remember that 12-0,
yes,
to manage her campaign. And
nice.
I was a very young fella at that time, thrown into the heat and the mix and the thrust of things, when, you know, at that time it looked that the PNM could have been in deep trouble in Tobago at that time. And of course, the history would tell that we were able to pull off a comprehensive victory. And so I managed the campaign, and from there I've always been involved in the coordinating of campaigns, including that of former Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles as well, who was also representative in my district. So I've always been in the back of it. And of course, we had 2021, you know, through the prodding and encouragement of the community, I came forward to represent the district, and here am I after the debacle of 2021 of December, standing as a lone PNM representative, and now also carrying the mantle as minority leader. So it's been quite a fairy tale.
A baptism, a real baptism there. What was your reaction to the THA results in December 2021?
Well, I was quite surprised. You know, to be quite honest, I'm sure everyone knew that after 21 years, the 6-6 and all of that, we know that the cry for change was real. Mm-hmm. We know that the reality of losing was also real. But I don't think anyone would have fathomed at that time that we would have lost in the manner and as overwhelming as we lost. And some of the persons who would have lost as well. Mm-hmm. You know, there were some seats considered almost safe seats in the grand scheme of things, and we weren't able to hold on. So it was quite surprising for me, to be quite honest.
You know, I was doing commentary for that period, and I was asked to give my predictions, and one of my predictions was they didn't believe me when I said it's either going to be a massive loss or a massive win. There was no middle ground after the entire 6-6. And your former political leader, she accused me of having a personal vendetta against her. You know, she said, I don't know Shane, and I don't understand why does Shane has a personal vendetta against me. But it wasn't about that. It was because I was one who predicted that she would become the political leader. And being the first female to hold the role of political leader, I assumed that she would have been able to bring about a level of change that would have steadied the PNM and allow it to have a sense of strength and unity. And you know, I was disappointed that the total opposite happened. But you know, you've survived And as you rightfully say, you survived the debacle and you've become the Lone Ranger. But what you've done is, in the Tobago space, you've actually mirrored Mr. Manning's win in San Fernando East in 1986. In that 33-3, Mr. Manning barely held on to that seat, and you emerged victorious in that Wims Spring Garden seat by a mere 3 votes. How does it feel?
I missed the last part. I missed the last.
You were able to mirror Mr. Manning in that he narrowly held on to San Fernando East in the 32-3. And here you are now the lone person who narrowly held on to that Win Spring Garden seat. How does it feel?
Well, it is surreal. It is, there's a sense of great responsibility because, of course, a number of persons remind you of that Patrick Manning era and the real rebirth of the PNM post Dr. Williams, and how Mr. Manning would have worked the entire country in terms of regaining trust and rebuilding the PNM brand to the point that we were able to return to government within 1 term. And so there's a sense of responsibility on my end that perhaps I too need to really take on that kind of leadership responsibility to help the party. Of course, in this situation, unlike Mr. Manning, who was both opposition leader and a political leader, I am only minority leader. So I'm a team player, and I would do all that is within my power to work with the leadership to ensure that we do the kind of reach out to regain trust in the first instance, and to provide a new and fresh kind of politics that people really understand that we are here to treat with them and their interests first and foremost. Our interests should be the least of it. And I've always said, if it's one thing that, Dr. Rowley says that has really resonated with me, is not to fall in love with office, to see this responsibility as giving service. And I've always said it, I will give it for as long as the people appreciate it. And that is the beauty about politics. After a time, people may decide that they no longer appreciate what you have to offer, but at the end of the day, you should do all that is in your power to ensure that you give of your best. And that is as much as you can ask of your own self, to give of your best.
All right, well, we take a short break, and when we come back, we continue our discussion and we get to know the man behind the title. Hello, this is Dr. Shane Mohammed, geopolitical scientist and lecturer. I invite you to join me for a new exciting show on IETV, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. The Real Politique is not an ordinary talk show, but one of education, enlightenment, and examination. Here we discuss not just the surface issues, but the factors, shortcomings, and lack of will to change the socio-economic and political realities facing our nation. We ask the hard questions, seek out the difficult answers, whilst at the same time creating a space for dialogue and discussion which all of society can learn, understand, and hopefully respond actively and for the greater good of the Republic. This is the Real Politique. All right, welcome back. Let's continue our conversation with Mr. Kelvom Morris, Minority Leader of the THA. So, Mr. Morris, we were talking about the duality of leadership in Tobago, with you being the minority leader and Mr. Dennis being the political leader. That's also something that has happened in the PDP with the Chief Secretary and the Deputy Chief Secretary. So that's a new dynamic of politics that you all are introducing into the Trinidad and Tobago space. And I've always said that I believe very strongly that Tobago is going to take the lead in teaching the entire country about the new style of politics. And what I like about it is that we are dealing with two very, well, what we would consider in Trinidad and Tobago is into politics, domestic politics, two very pretty young persons taking up leadership roles, right? And Mr. Manning, prior to all of you all, Mr. Manning was the one that held the torch as the youngest leader and the youngest prime minister in the country. Now, tell me, you know, why did you not contest the leadership position, taking into consideration that there's a lot of work to be done in the run-up to the next election, and you know, a lot of reorganization and a lot of rebranding. But there's this stigma that the leader must come from within the parliament, within the house, within the assembly. But we're not seeing that here. We're seeing that there's a duality of politics. You and Mr. Dennis, clearly you all have worked together before there's an understanding. But why did you not contest the leadership? Because I thought you were an automatic shoo-in.
Yeah, and you know, as you made an excellent point, there's a lot of work to be done, both in the house and
Master
outside.
Control, we're not hearing him on TV.
You hearing me? Dr. Mohammed?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, no, I was saying that there's a lot of work to be done, as you rightfully said, both inside the house and outside. And I felt as someone still finding a way in the politics, and having someone with the kind of leadership acumen as Mr. Dennis, it would serve the party well to have that kind of dual relationship, rather than you have someone who is still trying to figure things out and build a party at the same time. I think the more hands on deck, the better. And as I said, it's never about the position for me. It's about how do you assist, you know, an institution in bringing about the kind of development and the kind of change that you want to see for your island. And I believe with Mr. Dennis and I, we can be that kind of dynamic duo that would help the PNM to, one, regain trust, and then go into governance with a new kind of arrangement that would really transcend Tobago.
You know, Mr. Dennis does not have, he did not, in holding down the fort, you know, us as political scientists, as we try to get into the internal politics and analyze the internal politics as well. And, you know, I'm not asking you to expose any of your internal politics, but there was, I had observed that there was a sense of disagreement, I would say, between Mr. Dennis as Chief Secretary and Ms. Davidson as political leader, and it did not mesh in a way that you all are meshing, and it led. That is one of the things that led to the massive loss, because I think especially when the whole issue of power sharing came up, and there were, you know, you all took a lot of backseat and you know, steered very, you know, you all kept, I would say, very disciplined in how things were managed, even though you all were facing a serious crisis, I would say. I think, you know, therefore, your losing was something that, as you rightfully say, was a great possibility. And it was not because people had gotten so much fed up of the PNM, but more so that people had become disgusted by the way the leadership failed to take the party into a new dynamic, which is what is happening now. Now, I always believe that for all of the years that I've been involved in Tobago politics, that it is the place to be. It is encouraging for young people. It is welcoming because you all are getting along. Because I guess everybody knows your name in Tobago, and everybody went to school with somebody. When you all have capture the flag competition, that's a big thing that's happening, and everybody went to school together regardless of political affiliation. Correct. And You know, that's a level of camaraderie that is not seen in Trinidad and probably will never be seen in Trinidad. And, you know, it's unfortunate because you all are teaching the country. If I had my personal choice to make a decision to get into active politics, it would be to get into active politics in Tobago, because I resonate more with the philosophy that you all have over there. Now, you know, you say you didn't contest because you're more hands on deck and that sort of thing. How do you intend, though, to rebrand the party in a way that at least brings it into a greater number of persons in opposition, or to capture the flag of victory in 2025?
Well, it has to start with the people. It has to start with the interactions, understanding where we went wrong. There are instances where we would have to reach out and reconnect. We would have to apologize in some instances, because over time you would have, you know, disappointed some people in different ways. And we now need to be able to speak to the hearts and minds of persons. We need to capture both the young and the not so young. We need to treat with our policies must be actionable, not fanciful. Our policies must be real, and it must really speak to the issues of the day in terms of high food prices. It must speak to unemployment, especially amongst our youth, and underemployment. It must speak to developing Tobago's private sector, because outside of the THA, there's a little opportunities available to persons who would have gone out, trained, and want to contribute to the islands. So we need to really reimagine a Tobago that offers possibilities to each and every one.
You know, I like it. And you know, what I am liking even more is that you are literally speaking the language of your comrades on the PDB side, right? How is your working relationship with the Chief Secretary?
Well, as I said, we would support any and everything that we believe is good for the island. So once they bring policies that are going to advance Tobago, and even if it means in some instances disagreeing even with the central government, that we will give support, because we are Tobago first and party after. But at the same time, one of the disappointments, and I must say I've been quite disappointed with the Chief Secretary, who also is a former schoolmate of mine. I've been quite disappointed because what the PDP promised to the people of Tobago and what they are currently delivering are quite contradictory. And you would recognize a lot of Tobagonians, if you speak to them right now, I'm sure if you speak to Tobagonians, they're being quite honest, would express to you their own disappointment at this point as to what was promised and what was delivered. Even with the firings, I would tell you, we know that every administration will have to treat with employees and some programs, because it may not suit their vision. But one of the challenges we have is, after you give a commitment to persons that you will not treat with their employment status, you've gone about in a manner that is quite clandestine, that is quite disingenuous, that is quite vicious, because you are sending home persons and you are sending them home with little to no compensation in a period of a pandemic. And that, to me, has to be the epitome of an uncaring person, an uncaring administration. And for the Chief Secretary to have presided over that is quite disappointing. So when you ask me how our relationship is, I must admit that it is one that I've been quite disappointed as a Tobagonian, not just the politics, because when a young person takes leadership, You want to see them do well.
That's
And of
true.
course, he's a good politician, so he says the right things. But if persons are really tracking his actions and his words, I keep on saying it, his words and his actions just does not go hand in hand. They are totally opposite, and that's the disappointing part for me.
You know, you mentioned that you all are former schoolmates, and I think the foundation of that secondary school, a schoolmate relationship goes a long way. And I mean, I have maintained relations with some of my secondary school schoolmates over the last 20 something years. You know, in a situation like that, you know, it would be, have you all sat down? Have you all met? Have you been able to sit down with Mr. Augustine, with the Chief Sec, and have a dialogue with him?
Well, as you would know, very early, even when the pandemic, when we were getting high debt, and in terms of the pandemic post-December, coming out of the elections and so forth, I wrote to the Chief Secretary and asked for us to have a round table kind of approach, an all-inclusive approach, minority, majority, and stakeholders, so that we all can thrash out and find solutions to what was a crisis at the time. That meeting didn't happen, but we were invited to a health meeting. It happened once. And then, of course, the Office of the Minority also has some challenges in terms of staffing. So I wrote to him on that challenge as well. And we did meet. There was a commitment for us to continue having ongoing meetings, but that never materialized. I am always available. In fact, as I said, we want to change the way we do politics. Politics, yes, we can be adversarial, yes, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, we are all Tobagonians first, and we all want to see Tobago do well. So my approach has always been very open, and even now I'm very open, but we all must come to the table with clean hands and pure intentions. And you cannot be, and I'm saying this because it's a people issue. You cannot be terminating people in the manner that this administration is doing and pretend it's all good. And I would not stand idly by and watch this current administration treat fellow Tobagonians in the way they are treating them at this time.
You know, we coming down to the end of our discussion, and I want to have you on again because, you know, your humility is I must say your humility is outstanding, and if that is what is the future for Tobago PNM politics, I am asking you, is it that the political philosophy of the PNM Tobago Council is different from the overall the overall PNM political philosophy? Because you, and listening to you speak and listening to what you are saying to me, is something that is completely different than I have ever heard from the People's National Movement prior to you coming on board, and even from Trinidad. There is no feeling that there is an opportunity for inclusion the way you are putting it across. So is there a difference? Is it that there's a difference of philosophy between both?
I believe the underpinning, when you look at Dr. Williams and you study the history of the PNM, it was always a movement brought out about bringing people together and inclusion. Of course, you know, the leaders would have their own personality, but the fundamentals of the PNM has always been about people. It's a movement, it's a rally for people and of people, by the people. So I don't see a divergence in philosophy, but over time, of course, personalities, everybody would come with their own personality, and of course, the leadership style will then dictate how, you know, things operate and that kind of thing. But if you follow Mr. London as well, Mr. London was someone that was very people-oriented, and that's why he left the scene undefeated. And it's just a matter of us getting back to that focus where people is at the center of all that we do. The current chairman, you would recognize if you speak to Mr. Larry Paul, is one of those persons who also has that kind of empathy and that kind of people-centered philosophy. Our current leader, Mr. Dennis, also understands the importance of us treating with people in a way that doesn't make them feel marginalized or less than, because oftentimes, we can get carried away with the whole the high life of office, and forget about the people. So I think what we are focused on is making sure that going forward, the fundamentals of what we do and what we build will ensure that the people remain front, center, and involved in everything that we do.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining me. A half an hour will not do. We need to continue this dialogue and this conversation. I want to invite you to join me in September when we come back for season 2. Sure. We will be in contact, and we will do an hour conversation, because I want to I want to discuss more with you. I want to have a greater discussion with you, because I like where you are headed, and I appreciate your philosophy, and you are bringing a new dynamic. So I must say congratulations to you on that. Thank you very much for joining me on this show. And
thank you for inviting me.
And stay true to who you are, Mr. Morris, because you are definitely someone that is to be looked at and to be admired, not just in the Tobago space, but nationally. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we shall meet again in September, right?
And have a good night.
You
all
too.
Viewers as well.
God bless.
God bless.
We'll take a break. We will be right back. Hello, this is Dr. Shane Mohammed, geopolitical scientist and lecturer. I invite you to join me for a new exciting show on IETV, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. The Real Politique is not an ordinary talk show, but one of education, enlightenment, and examination. Here we discuss not just the surface issues, but the factors, shortcomings, and lack of will to change the socio-economic and political realities facing our nation. We ask the hard questions, seek out the difficult answers, whilst at the same time creating a space for dialogue and discussion, which all of society can learn, understand, and hopefully respond actively and for the greater good of the Republic. This is the Real Politique.
Dolly's Place, a home for the aged. Our home care facility offers quality care for your loved ones. Our focus is providing exceptional services by people who truly care in an environment that promotes healing and wellness. Ideally located in Presal, we provide professional medical visits, nurse care, and clinical appointments. Living accommodation, companionship, and entertainment with 24-hour, 7-day supervision. We are passionate about serving the best food in style. Everyone knows our manager Petra. At Dolly's Place, professionalism is the name of the game.
Welcome back. That was quite an interesting conversation, and it's a very rare one for the People's National Movement. And if that is the philosophy, and that is what the future holds for the People's National Movement, I definitely see great things coming out from Mr. Morris, and I do look forward to having a conversation with him. I'm now joined by the former Member of Parliament and Minister Ramona Ramdial as we discuss the aftermath of the UNC internal elections and what's next for Ms. Ramdial. Ms. Ramdial, don't roll your eyes. Don't roll your eyes. Don't roll your eyes. How are you, ma'am?
I am good. How are you?
I'm not too
Busy
bad.
Today.
I actually enjoyed having a conversation there with Mr. Morris, and if that's what the PNM future holds, then I may just...
Then UNC in trouble?
The UNC, the PDP, everybody's in trouble. So tell me, we have seen the revolving door of the UNC internal elections yet again, and
yes.
The numbers are not matching. The maths is not matching, Ms. Ramdial. What happened there?
Well, as you know, Dr. Khan and myself, we worked together for this internals. And if it's one thing we were able to do was to prove to the UNC membership how rigged this internal elections were and how they've been rigged in the past. But this one I want to describe as the worst UNC internals ever. It was from day one, from the word go, it was all manipulation and, a lot of stuff that happened in terms of the election committee and not getting our views and our opinions and our recommendations heard. As you know, when we say rigged or engineered in their favor, it all starts and ends with the membership listing. So what happened is that we got the membership listing late. We got a partial membership listing as was predicted. The Star Slate got their membership listing early. They created call banks, they messaged members, they called members and asked them to support the Star Slate. And of course, those members who were allowed from their call banks to vote were strictly those who supported Kamala Persad-Bissessar. And, we were unable because, the entire system was against us. And this is why we've been calling for an independent body to run the UNC internal elections. I think that's the best way forward and the only way where you can really have true democracy and the results of such democracy shown.
The numbers show that there was about 12,000 and that makes absolutely no realistic sense to me as a political scientist, especially when you look at the unpopularity of the political leader of the UNC and you look at the unpopularity of the opposition as a whole. I mean, the opposition is popular depending on which MP is working, and it's not cohesive as the opposition that you were in. And this I've written 100 times, and I will continue writing about it, that I equate this opposition to the opposition of 1971, where there was none elected in the parliament in that election because of the no vote campaign. There was also a very huge lull that election night, and in national elections we get results as early as 7 o'clock, and by 9:30 we have an idea of what is the outcome going to look like. That did not happen in something as simple as an internal election for a political party that's in opposition.
Right.
And Mrs. Persad-Bissessar emerged victorious. I have it on good source, though, that was doctored in her favor, and in fact, the true winner again was Dr. Khan. But there's no there was no, I don't think there's any real publishing of the results in a manner that anybody could peruse the public.
No, exactly. We got, as a candidate, we would have gotten the results from the election committee a couple of days after with the number of votes that each candidate got, a general summary of votes and all of that. But you're right, though. If it's one thing, by 9:30 on election night, they had declared that close to 13,000 initially, that is what they said, voted in favor of the Star Slate. Now, I can tell you, we had our system down correctly. We pulled together our agents, and all day we were getting feedback with respect to numbers. And as of 6 o'clock, only 8,000 members nationally had voted. So give or take 1,000, because there were some seats, some areas that we didn't have agents, but those areas are areas where the membership is not very large, less than 500 to 300 members. So, the thing about it is, yes, I also want to agree with you that the figures were cooked. Yes, I also want to agree with you that the membership wants change. 90% of the membership wants change. However, the 10% that were allowed to vote, and I stress on allowed, are those supporters of KPB.
But
it's really an unfair system, Shane.
No, but at the same time, Ramona, the majority of persons that voted in that election were over the age of 55, 60. there was very few young people motivated to come out and vote. And
definitely.
Where are the 30s and 40s, and where are the 20s? Where are those members that the UNC boasts about? I mean,
well, these are the disenchanted members who want change. And I can tell you something. There was also a number of persons who came out to vote whose names were not on the list. That was a rule that Mrs. Prasad-Bisesa spoke about even to media, saying that if your name is not on the list, you cannot vote. And these people were allowed to vote by the presiding officer. I understand there was a so-called master list that we weren't privy to, that, you know, a call was made and they would say, well, okay, yes, this person's name is on the master list, so let he or she be able to vote. But it's widespread disenchantment. People have moved on to other smaller opposition parties. A lot of the membership just opted to stay home and not come out and vote, especially the younger generation of the United National Congress. They are very, very disenchanted and very disappointed in the current opposition, as you very well know. You
know, Dr. Khan is one of the most formidable opponents and most formidable forces that could have been put in the driver's seat for the UNC. I mean,
yes.
Taking into consideration, he has the equal amount of years of experience as Mrs. Prasad-Bisesa. They are, in terms of seniority, one does not outdo the other, you know?
Right.
The only thing that she can claim is that she has had experience in local government, and then she was in the Senate for a year. But besides that, Dr. Khan really has been, he was literally handpicked by the former political leader, Mr. Pandey. And I want to ask you this, you know, what happens now? Because the UNC is more divided than united than it was before. And you know, the UNC has had 3 political leaders, Mr. Pandey, Mr. Dukaran, and Mrs. Prasad-Bisesa. And even at the worst time in the history of the UNC, when there was that divide between Mr. Dukaran and Mr. Pandey, the party did not fall, the parliamentary arm of the party did not collapse.
It was very strong, yeah.
It did not collapse. And, you know, while the party structure, the internal party structure was struggling, the parliamentary arm of the party in the opposition in the House, it maintained its strength, you know.
Yeah, because you had the likes of Jack Warner, you had the likes of Gypsy. I think you also had Ramesh Lawrence Mirage at one point in time also in the parliament during that period of opposition with Pandey, right before Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bisesa was able to wrest leadership from him. So yeah, exactly. So you have a degeneration of all arms of the party, on all fronts of the party. And you're right about Dr. Khan. And you know what you forgot to add, Shane, is the fact that he has been able to win a corridor seat for the UNC over and over and time again.
25
and
years.
That is something we must not forget. His strategies, his political strategies, his political acumen, his experience is something that should be so treasured by the UNC in terms of how to win a corridor, how to win a marginal seat. That is where he should be back into the party, incorporated back, so that he can assist and mentor the younger ones and show them the ropes and show the party the ropes in terms of how to win a corridor seat.
But he also has extensive training, and he boasts and he speaks a lot about it, that he has a lot of training, having sat and served under the late Hector McLean. And, you know, he got the opportunity to serve under Mr. Hector McLean and was instrumental in learning the parliamentary procedures and practice. And, you know, he was able to, even when he served in the last opposition, there were times when he could coach the speaker and that sort of thing. Now,
correct.
What happens, and I want to add to the conversation, Mrs. Prasad-Bisesa in her address, she referred to you all as detractors. What's next, Ramona? Is the UNC a formidable force?
It isn't. We have been willing to work with the party for the longest while. They know this publicly. We have said to everyone that we are willing to work with the party. They have said, let us unite. But again, I will ask the question, how? How is it we are supposed to unite when we don't know how we can get back into the party to assist the party? On top of that, Shane, I have decided to stay as a member of the UNC. I have no intentions of resigning as a member of the UNC. I intend to stay. Another internals is due in 2024.
Do you really think that do you really think that is going to happen?
I don't think so. I think it will be deferred. I mean, I told all my
so
colleagues.
So then, why are you holding on to false hope? Why are you holding on to false hope?
No, well, I'm not waiting for an internals in 2024. I am, however, not prepared, and I haven't thought about it, and I'm not ready to resign from the UNC at this point in time. What I'm telling myself, and I know a lot of other people out there, they're also members, are considering it, is to let's see how the party does at the local government elections, because something has to give before 2025. Something has to give. I mean, I listened to a few people on the outside who said that when they looked on at the Monday Night Forum this Monday, that the leader looked extremely frail. She sounded very weak. I understand that she was quite sick sometime last week. I don't know if it's true or not, but at the end of the day, we cannot have, or we should not allow Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar to take the party into another general elections, and that of the general elections of 2025. I think something has to give. I want to make a public appeal to my colleagues on the inside to get together and rock that boat and start making some waves inside there to change that leadership inside there.
Let's take a break, and we'll come back with we're coming back with Ramona Ramdial in a few minutes as she sparks the Bacchanal chord. We'll be right back. Hello, this is Dr. Shane Mohammed, geopolitical scientist and lecturer. I invite you to join me for a new exciting show on IETV, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. The Real Politique is not an ordinary talk show, but one of education, enlightenment, and examination. Here we discuss not just the surface issues, but the factors, shortcomings, and lack of will to change the socio-economic and political realities facing our nation. We ask the hard questions, seek out the difficult answers, whilst at the same time creating a space for dialogue and discussion which all of society can learn, understand, and hopefully respond actively and for the greater good of the Republic. This is the Real Politique. And welcome back. Ms. Ramdial is on a roll tonight, so let's continue the conversation just briefly before we move to another discussion. You know, you said you've made a public call to your colleagues in the parliament to rock the boat and maybe throw aside Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar's opposition leader in the first instance. Do you think they have the willpower to do that?
I think the pressure on them is intense. I think they have seen for themselves, especially the experienced MPs, they are seeing for themselves, they are seeing the downward slide of the UNC, they're experiencing it firsthand. Their constituents are badgering them, they're under pressure, I know that for a fact. And I think it's just a matter of time before something gives, and I really hope it happens before 2025. I'm appealing that they get together and do something.
In reality, what has happened, if you look at the trajectory of all of these internal elections that the UNC has had in the past, from 2012 come up the road, there's one thing that is very common about these internal elections. They are held just before the local government elections. Therefore, the Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar uses a carrot and a stick approach for councillors to be motivated in order to support her, in order to get back their seats. So you are not only to blame the parliamentarians for what has happened to the UNC, but to blame the councillors for not seeing beyond their big toe in terms of the bigger picture. because it seems to me that it's all about holding on to a seat and being politically relevant with the hope that after you hold on to a to a councillorship for a particular period of time, you go on and you become a member of parliament, as we have seen with Khadija Amin and we've seen with Vandana Mohit in particular. And Mrs. Prasad Bisasa has always been talking about this philosophy about you have to first serve at local government elections, at the local government level. So in order, in the greater scheme of things, what she's really doing is mirroring her trajectory. And that's not necessarily what is required for the bigger picture of the UNC.
Shane, I didn't come through the local government ranks. I mean, I was president of my village council. I was an activist on the ground, and I was very vocal and up there. I didn't come through the ranks of the political party in order to be an active member and a member of parliament. Apparently, I was headhunted by Jack Warner and Kamala Prasad Bisasa in 2009, and I came in as an activist. I was a former teacher, and I came in at a time where there were lots of changes happening in the country. I mean, you were there, you know what was happening. And so that is how I came in. And I mean, I think I did a pretty good job as a member of parliament and a former minister. And therefore, you see, and what happened, Shane, we were there as young people and we were mentored. I remember when we won the general elections and we had workshops with experienced persons on parliamentary
practice,
conduct and roles and debating and, you know, those skills that we had to learn for parliament. We had all of those things going on for us, and the party organized that. I don't think any of the current or the new MPs have undergone any such training in recent time, and that is why they embarrass us as UNC members in the parliament, and that everybody speaks about it. So you know, it's really. I think what has happened over the past 7 years is that the party has locked in, the leadership has locked in and locked down the party to the extent where it can now be described as a dictatorship, where only those loyal to the current leadership are allowed into the party and are allowed to have some sort of flexibility to do what they can at various levels. But there are no, I mean, people can tell you that the constituency executives are non-functioning, the party groups are non-functioning. I mean, I saw Victor Roberts on Monday in Parliament, in front of the Parliament, heading to the American Embassy, where he was going to deliver a report to the American Embassy, and he had 6 persons with him. In the glory days of the UNC, and not too long ago, when you had party activists heading up to do some work on behalf of the party, you had 100 UNC members with them.
Well,
so my thing is, where's the mobilization? Where is the party organization? The NATEX members, what are they doing to rebuild?
Ramona, I think we could safely say for this portion of the conversation, rest in peace UNC, and we may hope for that. You know, there may end up being, there are several new parties that have emerged, and we have the National Transformation Alliance, and then we have the PDP entering into the Trinidad space. So there are 2 things to look forward to. But you know, I want to shift gears a little bit. When Mr. Pandey, he got rid of the common entrance exam and he introduced the SEA, the Secondary Entrance Assessment, SEA.
Assessment, yeah.
The motto of that SEA was "No child shall be left behind." And here we are in 2022, where we have
the total opposite happening.
Yes, and nobody is saying a single thing on the opposition side except for the MP for Tabakit, Anita Haynes, who's shadowing education. But I would have thought that the opposition leader, as a former education minister and the person who was responsible for making SEA reality under the leadership of Mr. Pandey, I thought that we would have heard more from her about this whole debacle of children being left behind to write exam for another year. That is not progress, Ramona, that's regression.
Yeah, and Shane, you know, during our time as kids, we would have gone through the common entrance. You're right, it was abolished under the Pandey government, and then the SEA was introduced. But I remember also, whilst we were in government, we had this continuous assessment program that went hand in hand with the SEA.
Yes.
So that there was a sort of holistic development of the child. So you were being monitored during the term, you were being assessed during the term, and it went together with the SCA, where you had the final exams, and then both components were pulled together, and then you had, the final results were a combination of both components. I don't know. I know that
it seems that the continuous assessment that you are talking about went out the door when COVID came and hit us, and everybody got locked in. But there was
but
no.
But wasn't it before that? Wasn't it?
No, I think Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, as the Minister of Education at that point in time, tried to redesign it, and he got some opposition, and there's a new system under the current minister. But there's another thing I want to see is that we have a problem here in Trinidad now that coming into September, and even spoken about in terms of those persons who are applying for postgraduate studies. We are not allowing persons to access GATE for postgraduate studies, and the price and the cost of living is rampant in this country, and it's not, inflation is going to knock us down if we are not careful, because it's hitting the big countries like Italy and other European states, right? Yes. But there's something I want to ask you. I was given some very interesting information. There are reports that at least two prestigious schools in South Trinidad, their principals called in the parents of children that had not done very well in their end of term exam, and literally said to the parent that in the presence of the child that the child isn't worthy of being enrolled in those prestigious schools, and the child should be taken out and put into a trade school and therefore give somebody else a chance. And it has caused parents and students serious emotional distress. In the few minutes we have to go, Ramona, is there not a code of conduct for principals and teachers?
Yeah, first of all, you don't expose a child to conversations like that. I mean, I don't understand the administration of those particular schools. There's a way to do things. You call in the parents, you speak to the parents privately, and then if you want to incorporate the child in terms of dealing with specific issues that may be related that only the child can speak about, then you have the child in that particular meeting. But to call parents and child and berate child in front of parents, that is uncalled for and really a poor approach to school and from the management. I can't believe what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that is something that is happening in two schools in South Trinidad thus far. And I am telling you as a former teacher, and it's something that you should take up and run with, is that I have not gotten an opportunity to speak to MP Anita Haynes, who is shadowing education, about the issue. But this issue was brought to my attention this morning. And, you know, there is some serious gaps in our education system. And
definitely.
It needs to be corrected, but there are voices like yourself and Ms. Haynes who could have been a team within the UNC to face to have a meeting or sit down with the Minister of Education. We just saw an excellent interview with Mr. Morris, and Mr. Morris in Tobago is being an exemplary role model for the new age of the PNM in Tobago. Not necessarily for all of us to look at in Trinidad as well. But you know, Ramona, I will challenge you that, you know, you need to pick up as a former teacher. There are serious gaps in the education system that is not being mentioned and not being raised and questioned.
I mean, for the longest while, as you know, we've been trying to get rid of this exam, you know, that our young children has to face, you know, very intense exam that they have to face every year to enter high school. I mean, which first world country does that still?
I agree with you.
I am of the firm belief that the SEA needs to be abolished. Something else needs to be implemented in terms of the transition from primary school to high school. I understand that there's a committee that currently sits in the Ministry of Education that has incorporated principals and teachers from various schools, and they are looking at the overall improvement of our education sector, especially that transitioning from SCA to high school. So I don't know when that committee and their work comes to an end and how soon before we see the report. But you know, we have to keep the tabs going with respect to Ministry of Education, and you know, try to push for an improvement in our education system, because Shane, it's not only a costly, as you rightly pointed out, a costly venture now with respect to education. You know, we have got back to the time of student loans,
yeah, it's
where you have to go to the bank and get this loan, and then you know, half of your life now you're going to be repaying this loan.
Let's not forget the bureaucracy, Ramona. But we have to go with regard to our discussion. I really want to say thank you for joining me for this.
No problem. Thank you so much for being here.
But I want to.
It's always a pleasure.
You know, I think you should make a call to Dr. Rowley. I think you have much to offer the country, especially in the field of education. You should have been on that committee. But you know, don't sit in the shadows, Ramona Ramdial. Don't sit in the shadows.
Well, I'll continue writing. I will continue being a voice on national issues. As you know, I will use my.
But I think you need to call Dr. Rowley and get into the committees and show the UNC that you are bigger than the UNC and more for Trinidad and Tobago. But on that note, we close for tonight, and I say thank you for being on the show, and thank you to Mr. Morris for also being with me. That's the Real Politique for tonight. We were jam-packed. We had a great night. I'll see you next week, where we talk even bigger issue that has continued to hurt us and hurt those who experienced the 1990 coup, even 33 years after. So that's it for the Real Politique tonight. Good night, Trinidad and Tobago. I'll see you again.